take on legislation or take on sponsorship of introducing a bill and taking it to that next level so it does have legislation and does get support from the legislatures in the state of Colorado. Taxation is one thing, fuel tax, everything that's pertaining to taxes, severance tax, minerals are really key, and the gun laws that are being passed now currently too. So there's just a lot of issues that legislation takes that we don't really look forward to or look at a longer down the road what's going to happen to the tribes. So as Chairwoman Irene Kutch is mentioning, her support from the legislatures and understanding what she's trying to accomplish, maybe it's something that might happen and it might not happen, but going through the process of legislation, of understanding it, and as Aboriginal lands that came from the Northern Utes, the Uinta, the White River, maybe understanding what was really lost through history and where we're really going into the future. So I think that's the next level that we need to really look at on the legislation part. So with that, thank you.
Kristen Carpenter told me we should finish at 5 o'clock. It's about 1 minute to 5. Should we stop or where are we?
That's scary. That's really scary. I just want to suggest, just kind of building on what Councilman Hart mentioned is, I don't know if there's going to be a next year's conference, but I think we also need to target the judiciary in Colorado and bring about greater tribal-state relations in that regard too, because the courts can play a very important role and they need to be working more closely with the tribal judiciary.
If I may add on that, I would agree, and I think that Justice Hobbs has been a great supporter. I know tomorrow he'll be talking about water rights and ALP, but I hope that we can collaborate with CU. I know we can, and we've talked about ways to do that in the future. But just recently, the University of Denver sent some law students down to both Ute Mountain and Southern Ute to do tribal wills and conducted 91 tribal wills in a week-long period. I think that broke a huge barrier in terms of cultural identity, cultural understanding about how we as Native Americans look at death, and I think how we would work with our families to get them prepared for when that time does come. I think that if there's ways to collaborate with CU and higher education institutions to provide those kind of services or partnerships out in Indian country, like in the tribal communities, that's a huge benefit. That's a $30,000 to $40,000 benefit right there, just within the week time frame. That just that program was able to do that. And I think that we have other areas, like Councilman Hart said, the next level. And I think the commission's looking at what level that can be. For the past 37 years, this CCIA has been an office of one. I've been the smallest state agency in the state government. From Department of Corrections one day to CDOT the next day to looking at an unmarked human burial gravesite in Pagosa the next day, we kind of have to have a lot of different balls in the air at the same time. And in order to be not only progressive but also successful, we can't keep operating that way. We need to work with our legislators and petition them for more general funds to actually start adding staff to the commission and building it to have more representation of our Native American community, both on the reservation and here in the urban area. And I think also that'll help in the collaboration with working with our Ute tribe and the sister tribe. My Ute name is the Poich, which was given a name from Northern Ute. And not that I never forget that the relatives we have at Northern Ute, but we also need to make sure to understand that there's a relationship, that history that we're all hearing needs to be conveyed to our legislators, but also the commission history needs to be conveyed to our newly elected tribal leaders, which I think a lot of times we end up missing the boat on. And I think CCIA wants to take more of an active role with our newly elected tribal officials to get them up to speed so that they can be as successful as they can within their term.
Could I, sorry, just wanted to add one other thing in response to Councilman Hart's question. I would say that remember that Colorado has term limits. So the longest a legislator can be in the House or Senate is 8 years. They can go to the other chamber, but so it's a continual education piece that needs to happen, and they need to understand tribal sovereignty. That's not something that comes easily. We have the state-federal tension, so we appreciate and can understand that fairly easily, but to understand tribal sovereignty, that I think will fall on your shoulders and CCIA's shoulders to keep educating. And I would say, I would hope that Tribal Council would request to have their legislators come see them. You know, I gladly will come to a council meeting, the Southern Ute or Ute Mountain, but the day when I'm not the state senator for that area, you should be also asking those people and the state representatives from the area to be coming to you and having that dialogue so that we can be ready together when the next phase, whatever the next phase is, again, solidly built on the principles of Indian law, which again is not easy for the average person to understand. I will say that somewhat like the Bruneau agreement and the response from the non-Indian hunter or guide, that was the right thing to do. When everything was laid out on the table related to Fort Lewis and the Native American tuition waiver, they got it. It is pretty entrenched, I think, even in average American, but particularly Coloradans got it, that the right thing to do was we could not back away from that. So, so I think progress has been made on some levels, but it's gonna be a continual revolving door that you have to educate people and reminding them that Native American communities are vibrant, alive, economically viable, and need to be at the table and not in some sort of chapter of Western history 150 years ago.
Let's thank the panel and go to the Moderator.